Hello everyone, in this video I'll be showing you how to create line-based trails in Godot. We'll start with the basics and gradually move into more advanced techniques, creating dynamic and visually interesting trails for your projects. So let's dive right in. So this is our starting point. We have a simple bouncing ball. If you are interested in understanding how to reach to this point, I highly recommend to watch the first video I've uploaded to the channel. What I'm going to start with is showing you how to create a very simple trail. All the trails we are going to create are going to be line-based. And more specifically, we'll use the line2D type of node. And when you edit, make sure that you edit under the sprite2D and not under the ball directly. Now at this point, practically we don't have anything, not a trail and not a line. Creating our first trail is going to be very easy. The only thing you need to do is to add a point. And you need to make sure that you add this point in the position of our sprite2D. Now once done, let's run it and see how it looks like. And as you can see, we have a problem. The trail is not exactly behind our ball, so let's go ahead and fix it. So first of all, make sure your transformation settings are reset, and also I'm going to enable the top level setting here. And now let's give it another try. Okay, much better. You can see now the trail is on top of our ball. Now let me show you what would happen if you take the trail and put it under the ball and not under the sprite2D. As you can see, the position of the ball is different from the position of the sprite2D because the trail is no longer on top of the ball. Let's go ahead and put it back. And here we have it, our very own first trail. Not very interesting. It's basically an endless line because we add every frame a point. And let's be honest, it's not something that is very useful for games. Most of the time you would use a trail that is much shorter. So let's go ahead and do just that. But a moment before we jump and do that, let's explain how it's going to work. So we have our line that we already created based on the line2D type of node. And the line is a collection of points. The points are connected with segments, and we would like to remove some of the points in order to make the trail much shorter. And more specifically, we're going to remove the first point. So every time we're adding a new point, we'll remove the first point, and this way we're not going to create an endless trail. So let's go ahead and add the code for it. It's actually quite simple change. We'll simply check the number of points, and above certain number, we'll go ahead and remove the first point. Now, what number exactly you choose is up to you. It really depends on how long or short you want the trail to be. Okay, let's go ahead and see how it looks like. Okay, great. Our trail is much shorter. It's not endless anymore. But you may notice we have a problem. So if you look carefully, our trail is starting from the center of the ball instead of the perimeter of the ball, which may interfere with the texture of the ball. So let's go ahead and fix it. And let's explain how it's going to work before applying it. So this is the ball we're using. We're going to take the diameter of the ball and multiply it by half, so this way we get the radius of the ball. Now, why do we need the radius in the first place? The reason is very simple. We would like to move the trail from the center of the ball to the perimeter, and that's exactly the length of the radius. In such case, the new position of the trail will be the center of the ball, so current position minus the radius. The only piece is missing is to multiply the radius by the direction vector. In other words, we need to understand where the ball is heading, what its direction. Because just setting the trail on the perimeter and not on the center is not enough. We need to know where exactly to put it on the perimeter in order to reflect the direction of the ball. Now that we understand how it's going to work, let's go ahead and start coding it. So the first thing we'll need to do in order to fix the position of the trail is to define the variables we need. Let's start with defining the variable for the previous position of the ball. Next, let's define the variable for the ball radius. And what we want to do next is to calculate the radius of the ball once the line is defined. And I remind you, to get the radius of the ball, we need the diameter of the ball. The diameter of the ball is eventually the size of the texture on the x-axis. And because the radius is only half of the diameter, we need to go ahead and multiply it by half. Next, let's set the first value of previous position. And this value is going to be the position of the sprite2D, so the current position of the ball. At this point, we are done with the ready function, and we'll move to the process function, where we'll basically decide what to do every frame. And the first thing to do every frame, except adding a point, is to make sure that we record the current position of the ball. And because we have previous position and also current position, we can go ahead and define the direction. And the direction is really just current position minus the previous position. And we need to normalize the result because we don't care whether it's long or short, we just need the direction. Now let's modify add point to reflect the changes we did. And we're going to set it as current position minus the radius ball multiplied by the direction, just as we explained a minute ago. And the last thing left to do is to make sure that we update the previous position. In other words, every frame we're going to set the previous position to the current one. This way we're updating all the time the previous position. Okay, let's see how it looks like. And as you can see, we have fixed the problem. The trail no longer starts from the center of the ball, but it starts from the perimeter of the ball. We can now move to the next parts where I will show you how to make this trail a little bit more interesting than it is right now. Right now it's a white rectangle, very basic shape, nothing special about it. It's actually quite boring. So let's go ahead and see how we can modify some of the properties to make it a little bit more interesting. Let's start with the basic one. Let's modify the width, and this allows us to change the thickness of the line. As you can see, our line is much more thick now. You can also reduce it if you would like. Let's go ahead and reset it and move to something a little bit more useful. And that something is curving the trail. So let's go ahead and create a new curve, click on it, and in the area below you basically define how you want the curve to look like. So I'm going to start with a very basic implementation. I'll put a point at 1 and another point at 0. So as you can see, the trail now is much more interesting. The thickness is reducing, and this is due to the curve that we've set where the graph goes from 0 to 1. Now let me show you how it looks like when we do the opposite and we set the graph to go from 1 to 0. As you can see, it's quite opposite now. The thickness is growing when we go away from the ball. To better understand how it works, let's go ahead and do equal on both ends. As you can see, we're back to rectangle, but it's half of the original size. Now let's increase to 1 on both ends. And as you can see, it's basically back to not having a curve at all. My last note about curves is that you're not limited to only 2 points as I did so far. You can go ahead and add as many points as you want. It also leads to some interesting trails. For example, I'm going to add another point here in the middle and reduce it. And as you can see, it leads to a thin middle part, while the ends are still thicker. And I think we mentioned enough about curves. Let's move to additional properties and let's proceed with this trail. The next thing I want to do is to show you how to work with colors. Let's go ahead and change the color to something more interesting. Let's go ahead and choose pink. And you can already see that changing the color made it much more interesting. Once choosing a color, you can also go ahead and define the alpha property of the color, so choosing how transparent it will be. So you can see now it's more transparent. And while a single color is quite nice, you can do more with a gradient. Gradient is basically your way to transition between colors. And let's go ahead and demonstrate it by transitioning between two colors. For the first color, I'm going to choose red, and then for a second color, I'm going to choose pink. And let's go ahead and see how it looks like. So as you can see, much more interesting than a single color, at least in my opinion. And what you should know about gradients is you can use as many colors as you would like. Let's go ahead and add the color blue. Okay, nice. We're now using 3 colors. And let's go ahead and add even more colors. Let's add a little bit green. And let's also add a little bit yellow. And let's go ahead and see how it looks like. Okay, nice. We got very colorful trail. Next thing I want to review with you is capping. With capping, you can define how sharp or round your trail will be. And let me show you what do I mean. You can see the sharpness at the place where it breaks, and that's exactly what capping allows you to change. So now if we modify it to round, you will see the difference. And as you can see at the place where it breaks, it's now round and not sharp. And I will also mention that you can apply capping to the end and the start of the trail. And now that we're done with capping, let's jump to textures. Let me go ahead and reset some of the settings. And the idea is very simple. You can go ahead and use textures for your lines, so creating very unique trails. I'm going to use this heart image I've prepared in advance as a texture, and I'm going to change the settings so we can see the trail as a heart that repeats itself. And let's go ahead and run it and see how it looks like. Okay, nice. Instead of a line, we've got a trail of hearts. But at the moment they are quite small, so let's go ahead and increase their size. And you already saw the way to do it. It's basically just changing the width. So let's go ahead and increase it to 30. And as you can see, we have now a trail of much bigger hearts. The next thing I want to show you is how to make it twirl. In other words, how to twist your trail so it's no longer a straight line. Let's start with resetting some of the settings. I want to show you how it looks like on a clean trail. And now let's go ahead and start adding the relevant code. Let's start with the variables definition. One for the frequency and one for the time. Both of them will be of type of float. They will basically help us to achieve the spiral effect. Now to achieve the circular effect, we're going to use trigonometric functions. And to be more specific, what we define now is the offset. So this is basically the placement of the point on the circle. And every time it will be on different position of the circle, so it gives us the effect of the spiral. Next, let's go ahead and add it to the endpoint function. And then the last thing left to do is to make sure that we update the time every frame. Now let's go ahead and see how it looks like. Okay, nice, we have our spiral effect, but you may notice an issue where we see the trail above the ball, so let's go ahead and fix it. And the fix is really simple, we're just going to mark the z-index of the trail as 1 and the z-index of the sprite as 2. This way the sprite comes above the trail. Let's see if it works. Yes, we can see the trail is under the ball. Next, I want to show you how to make a use of two trails. And for that, let's go ahead and add a completely separate len2d node. Let's go ahead and add a script for it. And I'm going to simply copy paste the script that we've written for the previous trail. Let's increase a little bit the frequency of this trail, and let's also change its color. Let's make it round, and let's also make sure top level is enabled. Let's also apply the same changes to our original trail, but let's choose a different color. And let's go ahead and see how it looks like. And there you have it, two trails. Now, of course, you can add as many trails as you would like. And also you can change some of the properties of the existing trails. So let's, for example, go ahead and modify the frequencies. Let's set one of them to 22 and the other one to 24. And let's see how it looks like. And that's pretty cool. You can see the circular effect is much stronger as we increase the frequencies. And of course, you can even increase it further and see how it looks like. But I will leave it to you as an experiment to perform by yourself, as we are done for this video. And there you have it. You have now learned how to create line-based trails in Godot using different techniques. I'll make sure to attach a link to the code in the description. Feel free, of course, to leave any questions or suggestions in the comments. And thank you for watching.